Alrighty, we should be live. So, welcome everybody to the Second House Watch, the Nebraska Progressive Legislative Study Group. Today was the first day of the special session for the Nebraska Legislature Redistricting Committee. And so we wanted to kind of pop on, kind of discuss where we're at right now, make sure people knew how to contact their representatives about this important legislation. On redistricting. So quick introduction, my name's Angie Phillips. I'm the founder of the study group. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I will go ahead and hand it off. We'll have Cindy and Kristen, the other organizers, introduce themselves, and then we'll hand it off to Rachel. So Cindy, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Cindy Maxwell-Ostick. I'm one of the founders here of our study group, and just so excited to learn more about how we can be involved with this whole redistricting process. Thanks.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kristen Dupree. I'm just an active member in the group, new moderator, and just been trying to follow along the redistricting process as best as possible and share any of my findings with the group.
And then we have Rachel Gibson joining us from the League of Women Voters Nebraska, and she's super busy with all of this, so she isn't able to join us through the entire time. So we want to go ahead and let her kind of introduce herself a little bit more and talk a little bit about what she wants to talk about with redistricting. Make sure that we get to hear you before before you need to take
before the next one.
So thank you for kind of short, quick jumping on with us.
Yes,
on short notice.
And thank you so much for the invitation. I love this group, and I'm so glad that everyone is so engaged. So I'm delighted to chat for a little bit. As mentioned, my name's Rachel Gibson. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Nebraska. I serve on our Fair Maps Action Team, which is our redistricting committee. And then I'm also our Director of Education Policies. So with that said, our committee, this action team that I've been a part of, we've been following this process since April. So we kind of have the big view of everything going on, and now we're finally here. So with the time tonight, I would just like to highlight a couple things about how you all can have your voice heard, some of the nuances, some of the complications with this process. And I know that Cindy's going to walk you through some of the tech pieces, but just kind of a big picture. How do you make sure that your voice is heard? So the first piece I want to highlight is that when we're talking about redistricting, we're actually talking about 6 different maps. We are people mostly are interested in 2, which are the congressional, as you probably know, and the legislative. So the congressional is our House of Representatives seats, and our legislative, obviously, is our 49 unicameral seats. So the way that things have shaken out, and forgive me if I'm telling you all things you already know, is that the committee met through last week and came to an impasse on Thursday and could not agree on a set of maps to present to the legislature as a whole, which was the original plan. So what happened instead is that there are basically 2 different versions, and they're being referred to as the Wayne version and the Lena version. So Senator Wayne and Senator Lena. They approached it on Thursday of saying, we're going to throw it to the public. So we're going to take them up on that. So you need to make sure your voice is heard, because they said, let's let the public decide. So we need to make sure that we are being vocal, because they handed it off to us. Whether or not that was the right call, who knows, but we're here now. So with that said, today was the first day of the special session. The public hearings, 1 in each congressional district, start tomorrow in Grand Island, and then in Lincoln, and then in Omaha. At those public hearings, citizens will have an opportunity to speak for 3 to 5 minutes. I'm betting we'll have a lot of people, so I would plan for 3. Also, the time goes way faster than you think it's going to. So plan, if you're going to speak for 3 minutes. I highly encourage that you write something. I also would suggest sending your remarks both to the committee and to your representative. In the past, there's been different ways that you're able to share that information via email and have it be part of the official record, which is an important piece. They've kind of adjusted what they're accepting when, and the process keeps changing. So I think if you want to make sure that your testimony gets through, your best option is to go in person if you can. And even if you can and you do, I would still send a copy of what you plan to say or your main points to your individual senator and to the redistricting committee email. Something I also think is helpful is it should automatically be entered into the record for this particular bill, but I would leave nothing to fate. So in your email, when you share your thoughts, make sure you say, please add this to the record on this bill and identify which bill you're speaking on. So that's some of the like weird little things you would have no idea of how to do if you don't live in this stuff every day. So again, have your comments prepared, which I clearly don't right now. Have your comments prepared. Send a copy to your senator and include that redistricting committee. So that is, if you can go, that's the best route to go. If you cannot go because you have like a job and children and a life and things like that, and you're not able to, your situation doesn't allow for that, definitely email your senator and include the committee. And I would even go so far as to include your senator, the committee email, and all of the members on the redistricting committee, which again, I think Cindy's going to walk you through where to find that. It's as easy as adding two more names onto your email so that it gets seen. Because the worst thing that can happen is we get to debate on the floor and senators claim, well, I haven't heard anything from my constituents, because clearly we have some thoughts. I see a question here. So what are some important points to recommend to share? Absolutely great question. So what do you say in these things? If you're part of this study group, you probably like getting into the weeds. You probably like all the nuances and details. If you want to touch on those, that's great, but you don't have to. Really find like 2 or 3 main points. If you've seen the draft maps, you probably know that one of the draft maps has Douglas County being split down the middle on Dodge Road. So that would split the Omaha Metro. I bring that up because that's what I have sent my senator, is to say, please don't split Douglas County. Find a different way to draw that map. So find your 1 or 2 points that are really important, whether that be keeping Douglas County together. It could be really advocating for a very small difference between, don't have one district have 2,000 more people than another district, that type of thing. Even if it's something that you've read in an op-ed and it's more a conceptual thing, please keep the districts equal so it's 1 person, 1 vote. That's fine too. So have your couple of points. And then I think what's really helpful too is to have maybe an example that's a good fit. I read someone was posting that they lived 2 blocks from their school in Omaha, but based on this new line, their school would be in a different congressional district from where they were in their house a couple blocks away. So things like that, if you are going to give an example, that's a great way to go about it. And if you're not sure of what kind of to highlight or what talking points, check out our Facebook, our webpage. We actually also have a sample map. So if you're not sure exactly what you want to highlight, you can say, like, have you looked at this map? Feel free to have them look at our map, because our deviations are smaller and things like that. And if you want to take a look and see how we've cut things a little bit differently. So those are the kind of the big key points is be prepared, share your information, have your 2 or 3 key points, have an example or a touch point of some kind. The other thing I would say is highlight where you live, highlight the neighborhood you're in or something like that, because in talking to senators, we've heard that they respond much more to folks who are their constituents. So if they know from the get-go that you're one of their constituents, then that's something that they will hone in on. So do that in both if you send a letter, if you send an email, or if you do a public hearing. So those are kind of the main points. And I'm going to ask my friends, Cindy, have I hit on the main points you want me to? Are there other questions you'd like me to kind of address? There's a lot of details, but I want to make sure that the highlights have been hit for sure.
I think it would be important to also kind of understand, if you know how the next few days will go after it reaches the floor, how can Nebraskans kind of follow that process, and what should we be looking for?
Absolutely. And thank you for asking that question. I feel like all of us are so like, the next 2 days. But actually, that's a wonderful question. And because a lot of people, I've already started getting the questions of, is it too late? And the answer is absolutely not. It is not too late. So the way this is going to work is the hearings will start the next couple of days, the public hearings. Meanwhile, they're also doing some things behind the scenes to get the bills ready to go. On Friday is they'll start what's called general debate on the maps. And so they're not quite sure how that's going to look very like in the nitty gritty functionally, but there will be at least some maps to begin debate on Friday. And all of these maps are, it's different versions of the same thing. So even if it's not the exact bill that you've been looking at, we're talking about redistricting maps. So that conversation is going to start happening on the floor on Friday. And that's when all the senators can say their piece. That's when if amendments need to get drafted, that happens. We anticipate that there will be definitely amendments drawn. From what we've been hearing, there's not going to be additional maps brought to the floor as new bills, but instead they're going to go through the process of amending on the floor with the larger body to talk through that. So that's going to start on Friday. Speaker Hilgers has said that he intends to meet all day Friday, Saturday if necessary to get through that process. And hopefully the goal is to find an amendment that is amenable, no pun intended, to everybody involved so that they can then move forward and that would be passed on to final reading the next week. And it would take the normal steps that would then eventually go to the governor. So with all of that said, we've got these public hearings the next few days. Now is the time to email your senators with your priorities. If you can go to those public meetings, great. But after that point, or if you have a friend that gets involved later, still email senators, make sure you're getting that message across, because honestly, when we kind of look at the playing field here, what we anticipate there are some senators who are already pretty set on what they're going to stand on, and on if you want to think of it partisan wise on both sides. And then there's a middle ground, and really that's where the decision is going to get made, is that middle grouping of senators. So the more they are able to hear from Nebraskans throughout the process, the better. So if that's next Saturday when they're on the floor and they're getting an email, perfect. That's when we should be really paying attention to that too. All right, I'm seeing another question over here. If the maps are disputed in court, could the LWV map be used as a viable map or other maps in circulation? Great question. So if the maps get passed, but they're not legal, and there's a legal challenge to maps, that's when they go to the courts, and the courts say, yes, it is or isn't. The general rules are things like there's too much of a difference between, districts, or there's a racial gerrymander. There's a blatant, you've cut a community to make its voice less potent, that type of thing. So those are the types of things that would take the maps to court. I think my take on it is that there's a good chunk of senators in our legislature who know those rules and they know what we need to be playing by. And so I think that's where the negotiation is happening. And the question here is saying, can they use our map or someone else's map? I think the plan is to pull off of those sample maps like ours and others, elements that would that they could tweak on the existing maps, if that makes sense. So the bills that have been introduced, they're probably not going to take one of these maps from outside and just present it as a whole new amendment, but they might take pieces of it. And that's when we drafted our map. Ours, we wanted to meet all the guidelines we know, but we aren't data scientists. We aren't lawyers. So I don't know if you could just plug ours in and it'd be totally, completely no problems legal. But that's the idea, was to say, built from a totally nonpartisan standpoint, this is what a map that makes sense looks like. So that's a very roundabout answer to that question. The ultimate answer is they could, they probably won't. Ours would be, on the whole, pretty good. We meet all the absolute requirements that we know of and that we've met the analysis on, but there might be some tweaks to that. As far as other maps, I actually think Kristen's drafted one. I know that Common Cause has been working on some. Those are the only ones that I know of, but that doesn't mean there aren't others out there. Did he help draft the map? Mine did.
Yeah, he wishes he did. Yeah.
All the colors. It's great fun.
Oh yeah.
So that was a ton of information. Kristen, is there anything you would add to that piece of the different versions of maps or things like that?
I mean, you covered a lot of it. The thing that I'm really interested in, and I'm hoping to dig into it tonight, is look at more specifically, what neighborhoods have been cut, because when I looked into Lincoln, it looks like the Havelock neighborhood is split between 46 and is it 26? I'm testing myself. But yeah, just kind of some of that additional, dig into the weeds a little bit. And that Dave's redistricting app really allows you to do that.
Yes. And that's, I think you just gave like a perfect example. Like that's the type of thing you want to say when you're putting together testimony and stuff, is to say things that specific. Because I drew Lincoln and I am not familiar with that because I'm not from Lincoln, so those are the types of things that you want to highlight. I will say on that note, from just kind of a high level of our analysis, and we're actually meeting with a statistician that we're working with later tonight to get his 2 cents. So I'm sure you'll be hearing more from us on that from a statistician standpoint. But just in an overview, both Wayne and Lena Hands bills, the metro areas are drawn in ways that don't totally make sense for neighborhoods. And so that's something that we're keeping an eye on of, neither one of those is absolutely perfect on that front. And that's exactly it. Where are we splitting these neighborhoods? And is it based on party? Is it based on race and ethnicity? Is it based on socioeconomic status? That type of thing. So for us, some of our concerns are the metros. We'd like them to be a little more representative. I will say one area that we were concerned with that I'm pleasantly surprised is not an issue, just based on what we were looking at, is the Hall County, totally escaping me right now, Grand Island. That community is kind of ripe for the gerrymandering, and it didn't look like it got split in a way we were concerned it would. So that's good news. I would say the other area that we're kind of looking at too is the Colfax, Schuyler area, because those have some similar types of communities, and it's been split through there. So that's another one that we're keeping an eye on. And one of the bigger ones for us too, is just straight up the number of seats in our largest counties. So I think what sometimes gets lost in all this is about having our districts be equal and fair sizes. It's a pretty, at its core, it's pretty simple. No one gets more votes or more powerful votes than anyone else. It comes back to the numbers. And so especially in Senator Lena Hands' plan, it's not reflective of where our population is. So for example, did some research, and in our biggest 3 counties, Lancaster, Douglas, and Sarpy, it's somewhere in the mid-50s of all Nebraskans live in those counties. And if you just do the math, that is 27 seats in our unicameral. And I believe in Senator Lena Hands, she either has 24, 25 seats, and in Senator Wayne, it's 25, 26, but none of them reach that actual representation number of 27. So that's the other piece that we're really looking at, is say, are these where they should be to be fair representative areas? Okay, I'm trying to keep up on the chat over here.
While you're looking at that, I'll add really quickly. And Lancaster County by itself should have right over 8 seats. It has enough population for, I think, 8.06 is what it comes out to. And there's not 7 exactly yet. So it's kind of the same issue for Lancaster.
And I think one of the big things with that one that I'm like, come on, is that you can draw them more equal. And I think that's where our map is super helpful, because, if you haven't drawn a map, you can say, well, maybe they can't cut it any other way. And especially our map is a way to say, like, oh, no, you can. Here is one that has less deviation and that type of thing. So I think that's a good, if you want to fight that argument, if someone comes back with, well, it's the only way you could, it's really not. There are other ways to do it. So that's a great addition.
I love that we have your map to point to.
We do have a couple of Facebook questions here. I want to go ahead and jump in. One is, do we need to write a different position email for each bill, such as Lena Hands Congressional, Wayne's Congressional, Lena Hands Unicam, Wayne's Unicam?
No, absolutely not. And I would, I feel like there's some form things that have happened that we've just like thrown out the window this session. So the way I would approach it to try to cross all my T's and dot all my I's would be to say, referencing bill and then list all of them and then make the main points. Because again, also to that point that it is almost near impossible that we will see any one of these bills without some sort of adjustment passed. So yeah, send one for all of them, list all the bills so there's no loopholes there, say add to the record, and then hit those main points of what you want to see in a map.
Great. And then for our membership and those following us, we'll make sure that we post the format that you need to use and have all of the information for following as well. So we'll go ahead and make sure that we put that in a comment here on this video for those watching, but then we'll also post it in our event and on our membership page and stuff like that. Another question we have is, will there be separate debate on the state legislative maps? So will it just be kind of one big debate, or will each bill be debated? How does that work?
Again, because we're kind of throwing out the rules, I'm basing this on what tends to be or what has been. There will be an individual debate on each of those maps. So it's not like we'll just throw redistricting out and see what sticks. And again, keep in mind, we also have the bills for the Board of Regents and the Public Service Commission and those type of things. But short answer, I've never had a short answer in my life, is that yes, there will be two different conversations, one about the legislative and one about the congressional. And I don't know which one they'll push forward first.
All righty. We also have a question, what are the bill numbers? And if we know those offhand, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll make sure to get that answered in the comment. I think it's LB1 through 8. Yeah,
it's like 1 through, I think that might be up to 14, just because there were some other rogue bills that kind of like got in there, so the two that we weren't expecting that came in were Senator Hughes introduced a bill, I think, to pay for the special session. So I need to dig into that one more, but that one seems process oriented. The other one was Senator Colterman brought a bill today to increase the number of representatives to 50 as opposed to our 49. And honestly, I am digging in on that one because some of what I've read before in reading the bill draft, I need to understand it better.
Because they had a bill introduced last session or the session before about trying to increase the number of legislatures, and that failed on the floor, correct? So
I believe so. Yeah. If it even made it out of committee, you would know better than I. You would know better than I. Yeah.
We do have the ability with our current regulations to go to 50. It would just need to be voted on. But to increase past 50 would take new legislation.
And the question I have in reading the draft, just the draft quickly, is would that change the numbers for how things are divvied, which means we're talking, again, totally new maps for our legislative, our 49. And then the other piece is the language about how that 50th senator is appointed as opposed to elected until the next session, gives me cause for pause without knowing more of the information. So that's one that I think we got to keep an eye on, but I don't have any cold, hard, fast thoughts on it.
Okay, great. And then also there was a comment here, and I'll read it, and then if we have thoughts, we can. It says, please keep an eye on the fact that the Linehan map drags Hastings, which is blue leaning, out of Adams County and puts it into Hall, where it will be swallowed.
Thank you, Lucinda, for pointing that out. That is one that kind of caught our eye too. And that's also a larger issue we've seen, is that according to the committee's own rules, they're not supposed to split counties and municipalities unless absolutely necessary. And there's a lot of slicing and dicing going on in the legislative map in particular. And the bigger issue in my mind is how many cities are taken out of their home county. So like when we were drafting our map, we tried really hard to, for example, have Norfolk be the whole county, not eating out of that county, if that makes sense. So the exact same things. Hastings, its environment is that county. It's not pulling out of another one. And they do that in a couple different areas. So I am so sorry. I am keeping an eye on time, and I need to go talk with some folks in Dundee. I would love to stay and chat.
Yep. No, we super appreciate you being here on short notice. And just one question, I want to verify that we have our date right. The League of Women Voters is having Advocacy Day on September 18th. Is that correct?
Yes. And please, please, please do sign up. I think the committee was a little taken aback about how interested everyone was. So we would like to demonstrate, yes, we are interested, and we would like you to make sure we're represented fairly. So I think you've linked before to our Eventbrite locations here and in Lincoln. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you for all your hard work. I really, really appreciate it. So talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Okay, next we will head over to Cindy. And Cindy, you kind of have been going over the maps and the LDs and all of that. So I'll hand it over to you, and then you can kind of update us on that part.
Sure. And this would really have nothing to do with what you say to your senators. This is more about how to find the information that you need, as well as, how to get in touch with your senators. So this is the first time I would have shared my screen. So we'll see how this goes. Can you see that?
Here, I have to pull it on here. There we go.
Oh, so, let's get to the Nebraska Legislature website. And for people who are curious about, where do I go to find information about what is happening with the special session? This is the main page of the Nebraska Legislature website. And for example, today's activity, if you just click here, it takes you to the agenda, which was discussed this morning, and just very brief because they just basically gavelled in. It'll be more fleshed out tomorrow. And then you can also find the information about the various hearings and things for that specific day. The main thing that everyone's going to be wanting to look at is here in this section on the left, where you go to committees and special and select committees. And if you scroll down on this page, and I'm sorry, it does seem like it's kind of cumbersome, but when you scroll down on this page, you will find the Redistricting Committee. It's one of the special committees. And if you click there, then you actually have to click again to go to the redistricting website. And this specific website within the Nebraska Legislature website is dedicated to everything redistricting. Here we can see all the committee members so that you know who to be in touch with. If you want to find their email address, we have it listed, but you could also go individually to find their page so that you could find their individual addresses. But as far as getting in touch with the committee, you will want to be sending your emails to this main address, which is the official email for the Redistricting Committee. And the website is chronological, so everything that is added goes to the top. Basically, they were sharing how you can get in touch with your senators, and the information about the 3 hearings is here. And they, as Angie mentioned earlier, are in 3 locations. Tomorrow at 1:30 in Grand Island, Nebraska, at the Central Community College. On Wednesday, the 15th at 9 a.m. in Lincoln at the Capitol Building. And then on Thursday, September 16th at 10 at the Scott Conference Center, the UNO campus here in Omaha. And so those 3 times is when you can go in person to testify and let the Redistricting Committee know your concerns and desires regarding the legislative process here for redistricting. If you're not able to attend and do in-person testimony, which it sounds like will be limited to potentially 3 to 5 minutes, the redistricting chairperson is Senator Lena Hands. And her clerk or one of her office staff shared with me this afternoon that it's confirmed you may speak on any or all of the bills that will be presented for this redistricting committee. And you should just be aware that it would be very likely limited between 3 and 5 minutes. The position letter, if you're not able to attend in person, is something that you can write at your convenience, but needs to be sent by noon on the last workday prior to the hearing. And the last day of these 3 hearings is on Thursday. So the deadline is Wednesday at noon if you want your position letter to be included in the official record for this particular redistricting process. I know that Rachel mentioned earlier it would be a good idea to include all of the bill numbers with this particular legislation so that it would be considered no matter which direction they go. And I will show you where those bill numbers are in just a moment. I did want to point out that online comment submission is another option. And a lot of people who followed the legislature in the past, but maybe hadn't tuned in this last year, may not be familiar with this new feature. So I would like to show you where the actual bills are located for this session. And if you go to Bills and Laws, search bills, and you want to search in the 107th Legislature Special Session, that's this special redistricting session, and let's just start with document number 1, LB1. This is the bill for boundaries on the representatives for Congress in the United States. Here, when you look at the introduced and scroll down, in the body of these particular bills list the various maps being considered for that bill. But an easy way to kind of familiarize yourself is to look at the statement of intent. And this particular bill, LB1, is introduced by Senator Lena Hands. And so sorry, my screen here. This is where it lists kind of the specifics about how the congressional districts will be divided. If you are not interested in calling, emailing, or testifying in person, another easy way, as I mentioned, there's a new way to comment online. You can submit a comment here. You have to indicate that you understand how this will be input into the system, and you would complete this information about your self, your email address, which district, representation, and what your statement is. There is a limit of 300 words. And once you send it, the one important thing to remember when you submit the comment is it will not be actually sent until you confirm with an email that is being sent to you. So you have to reply back. And that's why they just make sure you're not like a robot or something like that. So that is regarding the online option. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to kind of be a little bit organized about this because the website is very confusing. But we do, as they mentioned, have 14 bills. If you'd like to go in and look at each of these, you can search them this way. For example, I'm putting in, let's say, LB4. And this pulls up the redistricting bill. And this particular one deals with all the legislative districts. This happens to be the Wayne proposal for the legislative districts. And you can see the statement of intent here. When you pull up these statements, they give you a little bit more detail, like this particular one indicates the ideal district size, what district might be moved from an rural to urban community, and then also what the deviation is for the overall range. And the one thing that I had a lot of trouble finding was about the maps. So if you are in these particular bills and you're like, well, which map are we talking about? They are shared. So sorry, I have to go back down here. On the main page of the Redistricting Committee, and this is down at the bottom. So it's not very convenient. You have to keep scrolling. But when you come to the proposed base plans, these are all of the maps that are being considered. And for example, the LB1 for Congress, those maps are the ones that are proposed by Luann Linehan. It's called the Luann Linehan proposal. If you look at the, like, for example, we were just looking at the Wayne Legislature maps. These maps are the ones produced and actually proposed by Justin Wayne. So this is how you can kind of dig into some of the details and look at the maps that you're considering. It is a little bit hard to read some of them, and a few of the maps aren't actually included yet on this page. Senator Lena Hands, staff member, did tell me that some of the maps have not been posted to this page yet. The main maps are there, but there are additional versions that contain more detail, like street numbers and things like that. And those will be hopefully posted sometime in the next few hours. I'm really hoping that they will be on the website by tomorrow. It's unfortunate the timing of all this is so crunched, but I'm just passing along the information I was able to find today. So I don't know, Angie, if that kind of answered your questions or if I've kind of covered a little bit about how you can navigate through this process, but I think it's just most important that you share your concerns with your senators and let them know that you want our maps and our redistricting process to be fair so that we're all represented equally in our state.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a really rushed process. I know us organizers of the study group have kind of been frustrated a little bit with it because it's like the special session starts today. The email for the redistricting committee wasn't even live until today. They're just now getting the maps up. They don't even have all the maps up. And then, they have the public hearings Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Debates start on Friday, but we're just now getting this information. Emails are due Wednesday. It's just a lot to try to take in all at once. So, I think we just kind of wanted to go over and make sure people knew how to find the information so that they can start to look at it. Kristen, I know that you've had an opportunity to go over some of this. Do you have thoughts or input that you would like to add as far as how the maps are looking?
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the process of organizing my thoughts, so I'll kind of share what I've seen so far. It seems like Wayne's maps are sort of took the current district shapes based on the communities of interest and the current cores of each district, and then just shifted the boundaries to reflect the growth in population. And it seemed very, very fair to me after I was able to kind of dig into it. I've noticed some different patterns with Lena Hands' legislative map, as I shared a little bit. You can the deviations between each district is plus or minus 5%, and so that comes out to be 2,000 more voters or 2,000 less voters in it. Well, and it's not voters; it's actually citizens. I should preface that, but still 2,000 people more or less, which when that translates to voters, that can add up to a difference in these legislative races. They can be pretty the margins can be pretty razor thin. So what I've noticed with Douglas County in particular, the Democratic leaning districts, that they're almost maxing out the deviation, kind of meaning we're packing the Democratic as many voters into those districts as essentially possible. And that's not the the spirit of how redistricting is supposed to work. You're supposed to draw the lines according to neighborhoods and population growth, but there's definitely some partisan favoring going on, because the more blue leaning voters that you pack into one district, the less in the neighboring more competitive districts. So that was a little disappointing to see.
Yeah, and I think we've all kind of shared our frustration because the unicameral is a nonpartisan entity, or it's supposed to be, and redistricting should be nonpartisan and fair, but we're not even getting that. I mean, we're literally saying the Democratic maps and the Republican maps. We're saying, Wayne's map and Lena Hands map, and I know Cindy and I have shared frustrations like it shouldn't be that way, because it just further divides what is supposed to be a nonpartisan unicameral. So
I would add to that there are many of us independents. In fact, in the state, there are at least 25% of us that are independent who aren't members of either of the two parties that are being priority with these maps. So I would just say that it is something that I really hope the senators will take into account and try to kind of maybe take a step back and do the large view and do this as a nonpartisan way.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to, one of our members watching pointed out that according to the legislature website, in the bill comment area, which is like when you comment online, it does say may be read and or discussed during hearings and floor debate, although they will not be a part of the official record. So I just, that's a great point. So I just want to kind of clarify on that. So this year on the Nebraska Legislature.gov website, you're able to go into the bills and make comments. So if folks want to go in there and comment, that's totally fine. But just know that senators may or may not read those and may or may not reference those. If we want to make sure that your voice is heard and that your comments are placed into the actual record, then we want to make sure that we get those emails sent to the committee email. And we also recommend including your state senator in there, and that those emails will be due for the record by Wednesday at noon. You want to put in, you want to add in your email, say, please include this in the public record. So that's a great point. Thanks for pointing that out. I want to go through the comments, make sure we're not missing any. Joshua says it's a constitutional maximum to have 50 currently, which is what Cindy pointed out. We currently have 49 legislature. And it says it's Senator Coltman that introduced a bill that would increase that to 50.
Sorry, I'm still learning this new platform to try to find the microphone. But yes, there was a bill Senator Scheer, Speaker Scheer, brought during the last session that would have increased the maximum possible senators to 55, which would have enabled each district to be smaller as far as the number of people they would be representing, which in my humble opinion would always be a good thing. But didn't happen. So right now the maximum would be 50. And obviously for me, I would be very concerned about how that would shift all the different numbers, as well as, having an even number of senators just seems like it would be a problem potentially regarding tied votes and things like that. I know we have the lieutenant governor that could always weigh in, but it just seems to me that if we were going to increase the number of senators in our unicameral, we would have done that when that came up for discussion a year and a half ago.
Right. Because what the census has showed us is that there's been more growth in urban areas and kind of a decline of rural areas. So according to the numbers, rural Nebraska could gain 3 areas, right? 3 legislative districts. Can you
Urban.
kind of urban could gain 3. Can you kind of explain like how that? Because it's not that you would gain 3 senators, it's that the districts would kind of shift and move.
Do you want to do
have
that, Kristen?
Yeah. So when the population moves a certain way from the urban districts or from the rural districts to the urban districts, then you'll lose those districts that are in the urban area. So the same territory or land space where it's divided across what would it be 24 I believe roughly 24 districts right now, then that would shrink to whether 22 or 21 districts. So the territories get larger because you want to reflect the same amount of people, but we don't the total 49 seats stays the same, but the lines move and you get more districts in those more populous urban areas.
And it really is important that everyone kind of just take a step back and realize that there's a lot of comments online and in the news and on, you open up your newspaper and they're talking about the partisan aspect of this and that you've got right or left or red or blue, Democrat, Republican. But really what's important during redistricting is that we realize that every voter should be represented. One vote, one person. And if we are, skewing the redistricting so that we have more voters in the urban districts so that our particular deviation gets high for the urban districts and then it is lower for the rural districts, it means that the voters in the rural districts actually have an outsized impact
right
on our elections.
It'd be like land getting more votes than people.
Yeah. And it's just not fair. No matter, where you're located in Nebraska, your vote should be fair and your representation should be one vote, one person.
Right. So I'm going to go through some of the comments that we have online and then we'll see if we can answer them. If we can't answer them to folks watching, if we can't answer them, we will make sure that we work to get answers for you. So Morgan asks, so based on census data alone, do Sarpy, Douglas, and Lancaster each deserve an extra member?
So, yeah, I think approximately. So it's tough because I think right now there's partial. Right now we have, the boundaries of Sarpy and Douglas don't contain all of their seats nicely. So it's like 25 point middle, like between 0.6, we'll say. And based on the census, they have grown to require or to earn 27.6. So it's not a perfect, I think, between the 2 or 3. So it gets a little tricky. But, if you look at just Lancaster alone, which it bleeds into other counties the way the map is set up today, and in both of the proposals, it could have 8 in and of itself. So that would be 19 for the 27, or potentially 20 for Douglas and Sarpy combined. So it's a little it's just not super clear, at least in my mind. How that works, but I think 2, 1 for sure, which is how Wayne drew the map. 2.
So Wayne's would move 1 into urban.
Yes. So Wayne's moves District 44, and that's from Western Nebraska into Douglas and Sarpy.
Is it Hughes?
That might actually kind of lead.
Right.
That might actually kind of lead into another question posted from Lynn. She's Wayne's version moves a district to the urban area. Does Lena Hands' version move any districts?
So Lena Hands moves a portion, and I wonder, I could try to share what I'm looking at. It might be,
Sure.
I don't know how.
Because 24, it's interesting how it all kind of then moves a little bit.
So yeah, is that, did I do it right? This is my first.
Yep. Let me add it on there. There you go.
There you go. So 24, District 24 used to be Seward and York, I believe. Let me see. Yeah. So this is the current map that was drawn in 2011. So this District 24, Seward, York, Polk. And now Lena Hands' map moves Seward and York, actually splits that prior district into two new districts. So all those voters would have, they used to be, one district. Now they would go to two new representatives in two new districts. And then the 24 would be a portion of Saunders, including Wahoo, and then some Sarpy, and then this is Gretna as well. So it doesn't make, it's kind of a lot of, I've noticed a lot of things like that where it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to kind of do that. So this is the only, it's a partial seat essentially was moved into Sarpy County that wasn't there before.
Didn't Senator Day comment online that her district would lose Ralston, Papillion,
her district, yeah, she didn't have Ralston, but she had kind of Chaco, Gretna, Springfield. Yeah, so her district, we can see the visual again. This is current. I have the cities on here. So this is, Gretna. Oh, I might have misspoke. I'm Springfield. I didn't include Springfield in the quiz me. So her current district was Gretna, kind of Chaco. Here's Papillion La Vista in District 14, but it would, definitely shrink, in which there was a lot of population growth. 52,000, she was 13,000 people over. And then, you see shrinks down here. And what's interesting about hers is it actually, so, they carved out Gretna and kept a portion of Chaco. So split the Chaco kind of neighborhood area and then gave her some of Millard, which, goes into Douglas County. So that's kind of a big change.
Senator Day and Senator Linehan both have the districts with the most growth. So they will lose some of their voters, but it's how you chop it.
Exactly. Yeah, Cindy, exactly right. Yeah. The other interesting thing about Lena Hands, she sort of added some representation into Sarpy, but also took some away from Douglas County and lumped it into District 15, which was Dodge County. Yeah. So kind of taking away, a little, to me, I guess that's primarily Valley, and that's a little more rural, I think, maybe suburban rural, but kind of it's kind of an even swap in my mind in terms of numbers and representation. Just to finish that thought, when you add, this is not a large number of people in Valley, right? And then you add it to Dodge County, and that's been a district for, a very long time. It's just a little bit different.
Here's a membership question. I'm not sure we'll be able to answer right off the top of but it says, we just moved to Malcolm. Does the Northwest Lincoln proposal that carves Air Park out move us to?
Yeah, so Malcolm, I think, would sit in Hilger's district, District 21. It would be moved to it. I'm sorry. Hopefully I'm not making people too dizzy here. Yeah, Malcolm was previously in 21. So it looks like it'll stay dependent unless it's a little more detailed than what we can see here. But this is another neighborhood that's split. I know you mentioned Air Park, and I'm not overly familiar with this part of Lincoln, but I don't know. This is when you're going through, when you see the boundaries that aren't, where you have to zoom in like I'm doing because the main streets and highways aren't obvious. This is like 48th Street, and it looks like, one neighborhood would be, half of it would be in District 21, the other half would be in District 32. So, that's stuff that's really good to look for when, in the next day, if you are going to testify or email your senator, look at where the boundary lines are. And even if you don't live there, if it's, you live in Lincoln, you live in Omaha, you look and see what stands out, and just, you can look at the shapes of the districts too. When they start to get really funky, they're probably, cutting through some neighborhoods that aren't supposed to be cut through.
Okay. I just want to go over, we're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap up here, but I just want to make sure that we have addressed the comments or any questions we might have. We do have one comment here. Are we able to share the link to the proposed maps on DRA? And why am I struggling to think of what DRA is?
Yeah, Dave's redistricting.
Oh, right. Okay.
We love Dave, whoever Dave is, software genius. Yes, why I like Dave's, I guess, well, then I'll try to be fast, but you can just log in there and pull up the current map. It's already loaded into that particular website, both the congressional and the legislative districts, which is awesome. But I've been brute force entering the new districts from both proposals. Wayne's is pretty much done. I feel good about that, so I could share that. I was trying to finalize Lena Hands tonight, and then I'll share that, so anyone else can just hit the link and then kind of zoom around like I'm doing here on the screen.
Awesome. Thanks for that. All right. Do either of you have any final thoughts before we kind of wrap up?
I'm really glad that you shared Preston Love Jr.'s town hall that is taking place tomorrow night. I think that will be really informative too.
Yep. So Preston Love Jr. is having a town hall in to discuss kind of, North Omaha redistricting. That'll be hosted tomorrow night at the Fabric Lab at 2514 North 24th Street. And then also just want to give another shout out to the League of Women Voters, who will be having their Advocacy Day on September 18th. Kind of our timeline, just to reiterate, for redistricting, they started session today. They will have a public hearing tomorrow in Grand Island. Wednesday it'll be in Lincoln. Thursday it'll be here in Omaha, and then Friday is when they will start the legislative debates on the floor. We have about 14 current bills introduced. Each bill is separate. So like if Wayne will introduce one on congressional districts, one on legislative districts, and then which other ones are included? We have the Nebraska Regency. What am I saying?
Board of Regents.
Board of Regents.
School Board. The County Commission.
State Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So
and
there's
the resource district.
Thank you. So so we've got those. Oh goodness, I'm messed with this wrong. So we've got all those dates, and then League of Women Voters is having their advocacy day on the 18th. Make sure to follow the Nebraska Legislative Study Group, and we will continue to update everybody as we go. If anything new or major happens, we'll be sure to come live again, try to help people get through this since it is so short. The most important thing I think that we want to reiterate is to make sure that you get to the public hearing and have your voice heard there. If you aren't able to make it to the public hearing in your town, or if there isn't one close enough to you, please make sure to get your emails in to the Redistricting Committee and also include your state legislature in that so that they know where you stand. As the study group, we just want to reiterate that in Nebraska, we have a unicameral. That means that we have our state legislatures, and then the citizens of Nebraska are the second house. So it is important that our voices are heard, and we do that through emailing and public testimony. So Kristen and Cindy, thank you for joining us tonight. And I want to give another shout out to Rachel, who was here with us earlier with the League of Women Voters. They are following this closely, and they are great folks to follow, as well as the ACLU. So yeah, all righty. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and thank you ladies for joining. If there are questions that we missed in the Facebook, we'll do our best to try to get those answered and get it out to our membership or out to our public page. So thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.